Welcome to Beyond the Blend, the podcast that goes behind the science and talks to the people at the heart of the lubricant market, telling the real story of the people who make the lubricant market move. With real insight and honest conversations, we aim to show off the people's side from across the entire lubricant supply chain. Join me, Steve Knapp, and Rob Taylor as we delve behind the scenes of the lubricant industry. Let's go. So a quick fire from 5. Funny story or one-liner?
One-liner.
You like to lose sleep or skip a meal?
Skip a meal.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert.
Loose guidelines or clear direction?
Clear direction.
A good book or a good movie?
A good book.
Tina, welcome to Beyond the Blend. It's great to have you here. Before we ask you to introduce yourself, a good book. What are you reading at the moment?
I am reading a book about Tudor history.
Oh, why?
I'm obsessed with history, particularly the Tudors, and it's just a passion of mine. I'm often found at Hampton Court. During lockdown, I finished my degree in Tudor history. I'm just obsessed with it. It's a passion. So I'm always reading. There's always lots of new books that are coming out. I went to an exclusive member event at Hampton Court last summer. It was a literary festival, and I picked up 3 new books, and I literally just found the time to start working my way through them.
Wow, there you go. So that's something I definitely didn't know about you.
No.
Tudor history. So you're reading about Tudor history, and I'm reading about Bobby Moore. Probably suggests polar ends of interest. But I know we're going to probably talk a little bit about football as we sort of find out more about you, because there's an interesting stone to turn there, I think. So Tina, just do the introduction to who you are. Really, that would be really great for our listeners to get that view of who you are and kind of a little bit of the backstory.
Okay. My name is Tina Redding. I work for the United Kingdom Lubricants Association, and I head up the media team. So I'm the editor of Lube Magazine. I've been with the UKLA for almost 3 years. So I'm still a relative newbie into the industry, still learning. Every day is literally a new chapter. I have quite a varied background: publishing, finance, airlines, owned a hair salon for a few years. So a very, very mixed background, but I absolutely love the lubricants industry. I love my job. It's so fascinating. There's so many wonderful people. So a very happy bunny doing what I do.
Yeah, and you're right. 3 years, I guess, is a relative newbie. But I guess you're bringing so much different experiences, and as you just outlined there, because when I looked at a little bit of research that we do for these podcasts, I saw grassroots football, I saw beautiful weddings, I saw Metroland, I saw Lube's News. There's a lot going on. How do you fit it all in?
Okay, so I'm no longer a commercial director of the football club. Basically, my parents moved from near Watford out to the end of the Metropolitan line. So you've got zones 8 and 9, and they found themselves in a beautiful little town called Chesham. So my father swapped his allegiance from Watford Football Club to Chesham. Unfortunately, he passed away when I was very young, when I was 2. And I've always been involved with the football club in and around, doing different things, different projects. And I was invited to join the board. I think that was probably 2017, 18. And I joined as their commercial director. And I had a fantastic team there, covering obviously all aspects of that activity for the club. And I actually stepped away after 3 years because, as you know, at grassroots level, a lot is voluntary. And unfortunately, it was starting to impact on my day job. But I love Chesham United. We have great supporters. Alex Horn is one of our most famous supporters, and he's now joined the board, which has, changed the club completely. It's a bit of the Wrexham effect. Once you get a high profile celebrity getting involved, it does kind of up the ante, and it's a fabulous club. They've gone up a step. They're doing really well. We've got great managers, JD and Muzzer, great team. So I was commercial director. I still love Chesham United hugely. I'm also a Man United fan. Steve, you and I have spoken about this a bit. Huge Man United fan from when I was a child because I've got family there. Metroland is my passion. It's my baby. How I came into publishing, we were at Ascot for my 40th. It was the Sheargar Cup, which is always in August, and they have an 80s concert in the evening, and I love my 80s music. I'm obsessed with 80s music. I think we'd all had one Bellini too many, and one of my girlfriends said, I've always wanted to have a lifestyle magazine. She's been in advertising sales for a long time. And I said, well, I'm great at writing. And someone said, well, you're a brilliant photographer. So we basically put the whole thing together. That's how I first got into publishing. Lifestyle magazines, 9 titles from Oxford down to Chelsea and Kensington. Then I moved out of lifestyle and went into weddings. So we had a wedding magazine that by the time I sold that, I think we were number 3 in the UK, number 4 in the US. So I have quite a strong publishing background, both print, digital, interactive digital, and globally. So Metroland is my passion because a lot of my lifestyle clients were messaging me saying, you're not talking about our hotel, you're not talking about our restaurant anymore. So that's why it was created. It was created originally as Foxy Deer, again, covering the Thames from Oxford down to London. Too big a territory for 2 of us. There's 2 of us in Metroland to cover. So just before COVID, we had a discussion, how are we going to focus? What are we going to do? And where we live, the ends of Zone 8 and 9, is a very diverse area. It's very mixed. Some areas are quite affluent, some quite not. But there's such a rich culture here, and there's so many fabulous businesses. So we rebranded as Metroland to cover Chesham, Amersham, the Chalfonts, and the surrounds. So, Gerrards Cross and all the surrounding villages. So really the South Chilterns. And then COVID hit. It was an interesting time. Our big plans for this amazing print lifestyle magazine, we had to go out as digital, then print, then digital. And we're just about to go back as print again. But it is just my passion project. I've been involved in many community projects, local carnivals. We started a Chiltern Toy Bank, which was collecting toys for children at Christmas, children where families, unfortunately, due to no fault of their own, were facing financial hardship. So we were supported by some great people, Hasbro, the Lego teams, ASOS. We managed to put a shop together to help these families at Christmas, and that's still running. I've done high street projects where we're trying to increase footfall and work with landlords to do incremental rentals so we can get independent businesses into the high street. So my passion, I have a few, as we've established, 80s music, reading, history. I'm very passionate about community and local people. Very passionate. When COVID did hit, we started a Facebook group called Shop Local to cover the area. So where high street shops have been forced to close because of COVID restrictions and they weren't able to trade, we were then giving them a digital high street where they could still put their products. This is what we've got on sale today. This is what it is. This is how you buy it. So it meant that these people, the artisans, the independent traders, the high street traders, could still have an income leading up to Christmas. And it was so successful. I think within a week we had 5,000 members, 200 shop owners, stores. It was very successful. So yeah, I have a few passions: community.
You do.
Music. Football.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. I mean, I guess a lot of that is all collected to community, right? So the football is community, and the 80s music. Now we can't let that go by. The 80s is a very wide-ranging genre of music, isn't it? So probably the most diverse, I would probably, because it was my era. So I sort of remember how polarized my friends were, right? I had goths, I had people that liked The Cure, I had people that liked Wham. And it's just a funny side story. My wife's she works in a primary school, and one of the young children said to her only a couple of weeks ago, they said, I went to an olden days party at the weekend. an olden days party. And my wife said, "Oh, really? What was the theme?" And this little girl said, "The 80s." and yeah, so part of the olden days. But let's go into the 80s. What would be the sort of the high points of music in the 80s for you?
Do you know what, Steve? I really feel sorry for the younger generation, because I think 80s we had the best music. It was like a whole explosion of different genres of music. We were so the 70s were great, with Bowie and Queen, and we had, then the start of punk, and we had proper rock, Susie Quatcho, we had great music. But we went into the 80s and suddenly everything changed. You're right. People were in different camps. Were you a new romantic? Were you goth? Where did you sit? It seemed at the time it was impossible for people to like all music. I was just obsessed with 80s music. And then towards the end of the 80s, I worked for British Airways, and one of my jobs was looking after the VIPs. So I got to meet a few of them. That does change your perspective a little. I won't name any names, but I had some really good friends growing up during the 80s that were mainstream pop artists. So I was quite lucky. I had a really, an interesting social circle where I got to know some of these people kind of firsthand. But I was brought up in a house with the Beatles and Beethoven. That's what my parents loved. So I had quite an interesting musical upbringing. But yeah, I love 80s music. When I was at high school, I came down with glandular fever. I was doing my O-levels and I was stuck at home for a few weeks. My grandfather had given me an old, do you remember the old record players where you just plugged it in, you lift the lid and it was and the speakers at the front. And I must have played Duran Duran Save a Prayer over and over. And my mum was like, "Can you take that off?" And I was like, "But I love it. I'm going to marry John Taylor." That was, that was I was convinced in the 80s, but I think it was just such an explosion of music. I brought my kids up listening to 80s, 90s, completely changed. A1, Steps, it was all very, Backstreet Boys, it was all very Britney. It moved into proper pop culture, Blur, and things like that, Oasis. But I love my music. I'm really bad. People get in my car and they're like, Megan and I pop out in our car. It's like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "Oh, such and such." And it's always really loud. It's like, "Can you turn it down?" "Yeah, all right."
So then we start to sort of have people listening into Beyond the Blend. And when we talk about getting to know the people behind, this is really what we're doing here. So the 80s music, a real passion around community, a historian specifically into the Tudor side of things. At the moment, I'm still struggling to see where the lubricants link comes, but we'll get there. A little more into the research. I listened to a podcast that you joined about mobility and travel specifically.
Oh, Jonathan Fletcher, yes.
Yeah, I listened to that, and I learned that you've broken your neck twice and you've been in a wheelchair twice.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, I had an accident quite a few years ago. I think, I'm trying to think how long ago. I'm going to say probably 25 years ago. Had an accident. Basically, I got caught in a door, a very heavy metal frame door. And I didn't realize at the time, but the door latch was broken. And as I was going out, the door snapped and I twisted. It was undiagnosed for a few weeks because the doctors couldn't work out what was going on. Pins and needles and all these symptoms. And I was with my doctor, and her husband came in, who's a neurologist, took one look and said, "Well, it's either MS or you've broken your neck. So come on, we're off to the Radcliffe, we're off to Oxford to see what's going on." So basically, I broke my third, fourth, fifth vertebrae, and they had to do an operation. For those who've seen me, you might notice I have a slight scar at the front of my neck. So that's the first time it was repaired. And then probably, I'm trying to think, about 5-6 years later, I fell down some stairs, lost my footing, carrying a table, lost my footing, fell backwards, and I broke it again. So for those that do see me with my hair up, I have a scar that extends from basically all the way down, where I had to have it repaired for a second time because I managed to break third, fourth, fifth, and sixth vertebrae. So I'm very lucky. I'm walking, I'm talking, I still dance. The only, I think, symptom I do have occasionally is if I'm very tired, this sounds weird, but my right leg might turn slightly and drag, not in a, overemphasized way, but yes, I've been in a wheelchair twice. I know how people treat you differently, human beings are funny, aren't they? Perception, they see something and they just make a snapshot. And I was saying to Jonathan, I remember when I was in a chair for the first time, people leaning down and shouting in my face, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm okay, thank you. It was a horrendous time. I remember going down for the first surgery, and the surgeon came along and he said, "What you've done, you've squashed the spinal cord as it snapped, and it's the whole thing is better. It does that now. My spinal cord isn't straight like anyone else's. It's that. So sometimes messages struggle to get through to my lower limbs." And I remember him saying, "Can you write some letters to your family? Because I'm afraid it's very unlikely that, you're going to come out of this mobile. We're going to end up puncturing the spinal cord, trying to repair the neck. So you will be paraplegic." And that was a bit of a wake up call, having to write letters to my daughter at the time and my partner and my mum, just because at that time things were very different. They're not as they were now, whereas, with such medical advancements, and now, thank God, people with any form of disability can have a new life, and there is hope, and there's, so much is changing now. But at the time when I did it, the surgeon was very much, "Look, you're going to be in a wheelchair and that's it for you." So a very, very trying time. I remember waking up from surgery and wiggling my toes and thinking, "Oh, this has gone rather better than they expected." I was very, very lucky. So, and I'm grateful for that every single day. And I used to be a gym addict. 5-6 times I'd be in the gym, I'd be running, I'd be working out, I'd be playing squash, doing tennis, horse riding. I had horses most of my life, swimming, scuba diving, qualified diver. Everything changes because I'm allowed to swim, but I'm not allowed to do a crawl because it puts my neck in a strained position. I'm not allowed to dive into a pool anymore. I can still scuba, but I have to get into the water before I put my kit on. I have to be really careful. I'm not in any danger. My neck's, everything's fully working, but I always have to, just be mindful of the fact that it was quite a severe injury. I was very lucky to come out of it not once, but twice. And therefore, sometimes I have to listen to my body. So if my body's saying, "Look, you've just got to switch off for an hour or a couple of hours or a Saturday afternoon," then I listen to it and I switch off. My dancing's not as good as it was, Steve. So next time we're at the annual dinner or not the annual, we don't dance there, but if we're at an event and, don't be pulling me onto the dance floor because I'm not two steps Tina anymore.
Two-step Tina, no. Well, and we certainly don't want to do is go back to that football, get a hat trick, right? So let's stick at 2. Let's stick at a brace. But that must have been so traumatic, and I guess that's influenced quite a lot of your thinking around mobility and accessibility, and just include. Let's keep the activities going. Inclusivity. There's a lot that probably changed a lot of your perspective on that aspect, I'd imagine, right?
I think it does. When you're outside looking in, and whilst you can be sympathetic with people in that situation, you don't have a full understanding of what it's like to be in that position. So having successfully broken my neck twice and recovered, and I am recovered, and I'm very lucky, I have a very different view on inclusivity and accessibility, and I do auditing, premise auditing. So this is obviously before I joined UKLA. I would work with hotels and restaurants and advise them as to how they could improve various things, from like menus, so a large menu, or have an audio menu, or the actual accessibility into the property, how accessible were the toilets, basically how are you set up to cater for people with different needs. If you're a shop, do you maybe have an hour where you open just for, anyone who's suffering from, I wouldn't say suffering because we have to embrace this now, but a form of neurodiversity. And things are very different now. It's just moved on so much. It's so progressive that how things have happened and things are changing. Unfortunately, not changing quick enough. I can walk, down the local village, and I think, why haven't they got a doorbell at that height? Why are they? For a lot of businesses, I think they have a misconception that it's very expensive to be accessible, but it's not. There's lots of small changes we can make that have a big impact. The magazine, Lube Magazine, when I first came in, we were print and digital, but it was a click and flick digital, which I'm just not a fan of because I never get the point of them. So we made it interactive. So we embedded video into their digital, because if you're a younger generation, or maybe you're not into a traditional learning, which I'm not, I learn more by looking at, visual learning than I do by reading, then it helps you understand an application or a process. We also made the magazine available. You could download in local language if English is not your first language. And there also is an audio function on there. So if you want to listen to it rather than read it. So we're trying to cover all bases to make the magazine as accessible as possible so that as many people are comfortable reading it. And, accessibility is just if you've listened to the podcast with myself and Jonathan, he is such an amazing guy. And he's really at the forefront, working with government, etc., as to how accessible travel can be improved and what needs to be done.
Yeah. I did listen with a genuine curiosity, because one of my 3 daughters is autistic,
yes,
as I shared with you, and I must say, we choose an airline specifically for our family's summer holiday because of their awareness and appreciation of small things as you described them. Funny enough, it's one of the cheaper airlines. It's Jet2, and they allow us to check in a private, quiet area. So there's no line, there's no queue, there's no sensory overload, and they allow us pre-boarding. So they're 2 very cheap things to do, but wholly make a difference in our ability as a family to do something that others would see as a very normal thing. So very interesting that you make those comments.
Yeah, that saddens me in a way. I mean, that's wonderful for you, but it's what everyone should be doing. I won't get on my soapbox because it's cool. You don't want me on my soapbox about accessibility, but it's what everyone should be doing. If Jet2 are doing it, then the other airlines should be doing it as standard. 1 in 4 people have a form of disability. I hate the word disability, but 1 in 4 people. So it could be neurodiversity, it might be your sight, it might be mobility, it could be your hearing. I don't know. I think that the new generation that are coming through aren't afraid to show it and say, this is who I am and this is what I demand as a basic minimum. For an older generation, such as ourselves, we are an older generation. I'm deaf. I'm deaf in one ear. I've got a hearing aid, but when have you ever seen me wear my hearing aid? I don't want, I say I don't want people to know. Now you all know. You all know that I'm 40% down in one ear and more in another. So I have a hearing aid. I only have to wear it. It's not something I need to wear every day, but I have to wear it if we're, say, at networking meetings or events, because the noise in the room, when you're trying to have a conversation with someone when we're at an event, and the noise level is just, it's like everything's around you. So I wear it at events, but not on a day-to-day basis. So there you go. That's something else you didn't know about me.
It's about finding out about the people, and I'm really grateful that you're sharing a little bit more about you, because I think
I'm probably gonna regret this.
Well, I sincerely hope not. And as I sort of very fortunate that we're in semi-regular contact, and whenever I sort of message you on LinkedIn, your profile always pops up, and I've never asked you this, and I'm going to ask you now because I am interested. I know you as Tina, but when I search your LinkedIn profile, it says Lady Tina. Now, if you were comfortable could you just tell me what that is about?
There's no biggie. It's an old family thing, and it's more Scottish than it is English. It wasn't used for a couple of generations, and I don't even know if I have the right to use it. But I thought, well, if he had it and he's direct relation, I won't say too much, but then I'm going to pick it up and use it. So my LinkedIn, but everyone just calls me Lady T in the industry. That's the weird thing. I walk into a conference and my kids don't use theirs. But I walk into a conference. Yeah, it's normally Vlad from Avista, Lady T, and it's just stuck. Yeah, no, I don't mind. I thought you were going to ask me about my profile picture.
Right, no. We'll do that another time. No, I mean, I think I've heard people reference you as Lady T, and of course, it just takes a little bit of time to think, who are you talking about? Because you know, we sort of probably address each other as Steve and Tina. But
I did, yeah. Steve, it was a social experiment. I said to my mum, "Can I use it?" And she said, "Well, I don't know if you can, you know, legally if you can." And I said, well, look, I'm just going to use it and see what happens. And it was very interesting. I did it originally as a social thing. Right, I'm going to use it because no one else has used it. And it changed things on my LinkedIn. It's the only place you'll see it listed.
Yeah, because the correlation to me that jumped off the page was you in the wheelchair, where people were talking down at you and loudly at you, versus putting this probably slightly more, creating a different perception with the word lady in front of your name. And I wondered if there was almost like a juxtaposition you'd created there.
No. No. It's interesting you say about perception. My profile, I will actually explain this. My profile picture is a professional picture of me at Cliveden House. So Cliveden's a beautiful house in Taplow, in just on the Buckinghamshire border. Very famous, used for lots of filming. Meghan Markle stayed there the night before the royal wedding, and they did an exhibition, Famous Women of Cliveden, because I was born there. And they had a huge exhibition of my picture everywhere. And friends were going to Cliveden because it's National Trust as well. So, oh my God, we've seen your picture like on the wall at Cliveden. We had no idea you were born there. They said, oh my God, and all this. And I'm like, yeah, I was born at Cliveden. And then I'll have to kind of go, I was born in a hospital at the bottom of the garden. And they were like, what? And I said, there used to be a Red Cross hospital at the bottom of Cliveden. But I just tell anyone asks where were you born, I just say, there you are. There's another one, Cliveden. So there you go. That secret's out as well.
Yeah,
I think we'd better stop before I tell you anything else.
Oh no. We've got a few more to go. Yeah, okay. That's for sure. Yeah. So look, we know that there's this community vibe that, you know, really is underneath the surface. We hear that through Metroland. We've seen that through you cheering on Chesham FC from the terraces. It kind of brings me to the moment of where our association at least connected, and that was the community you're building with Lube News. And I still don't see what the connection is between all of the things you've shared with us, and then what attracted you about the lubricant space. So let's bring it to this current position of Lube News, and what makes you tick in the space, and what attracted you to the area?
Oh gosh, what brought me into the lubricants? It was the job, because I love being an editor, and the job came up, and I thought, well, that's interesting. I had reservations because of my perception of the lubricants industry and the oil industry. And I'm as guilty as anyone else outside of our industry for not understanding that there is a huge difference between the two. But you and I both know that as an industry, we're not great at talking about who we are and how important we are as an industry. It's getting better. It's getting a lot better. Basically, it was the job, coming and be, a magazine editor, a global publication, well, a European, obviously focused publication, but with a global audience. And I remember going along for the interview, and I met David Wright, our Director General, and Laurie McHale, who, we are Laurie and I are the media team. And I just thought, I had some misconceptions going along. I know how to be a magazine editor. I've done that 4 times, but was it an industry I wanted to be part of? That my reservations were there. And I met David and Laurie, and I thought, well, they're thoroughly lovely chaps, aren't they? They seem pretty decent. And so I did some rooting around. I did a little bit of research. I've got friends that worked in the industry for the big players, for BP and Shell. They're now retired. At the time, I was working for a charity. I was working for a local charity 3 days a week, and the sole purpose of this charity is refurbishing donated tools, sewing machines, mechanical stuff, creating kits that go out to Africa, enabling people there to create new jobs for themselves, their families, and their communities. So a wonderful job, this charity, just amazing. But after I'd met David and Laurie, I went back and spoke to a couple of our, one of our guys in the petrol department. He was in the oil industry for years. And I went and had a chat with him, and I said, what do you think? I don't want to leave the charity because you're all so lovely, but I need to do something that's right for me. I need to get back into full-time work, and I need to get back to being a magazine editor, because working for the charity, I was looking after office admin and shipping, etc., and helping with the volunteers. And he talked about his time in the industry, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And I thought, yeah, this is a path that is worth walking down. And I have to admit, the first few weeks were just probably horrendous. It was just, there was so much information. I couldn't take it in. I didn't understand, what a blender did, what additive there was so much. And it was just, what have I done? I think for the first 3 months, I was just a rabbit in the headlights, because it is quite a difficult industry to understand. The players in the industry, the products, the applications, the hierarchy of the industry. I think one of the first events I went to was our sustainability conference. And obviously, as the new editor, and I'd only been in a couple of months, I remember standing up and looking around the room. I thought I'd stumbled into a Masonic convention. I was like, oh my gosh. But the industry has changed so much over the 3 years. And this is such a good thing. We've got, the rise of the ladies, taking more higher positions, more influential positions within the industry. It's becoming more diverse. It is starting to flourish, I think. It's such a lovely industry. There's so much history around it. There's so much camaraderie. It is like being part of an exclusive. I think it's like being part of an exclusive club. We know what we do is really important. We're looking at our, alternative products, more sustainable products, bio-based, everything that from the turbines, everything. We're looking at how we can harness energy. Everybody in the industry has the best intentions at heart. They want to do the best they possibly can in the role they're in. And everyone has a common goal. We know as an industry what needs to be done. But it's not an overnight thing for us. It's going to take us a little bit longer to get the industry to where the public perceive they want us to be, because they don't really understand us or understand, as I say, how important we are or how important the products are. And it's all, you and I have spoken about this before. It's almost like you need to make some kind of announcement. Look, this is us. This is what we do. Do you understand? Look at your car, because it's a common thing that everyone will understand. Do you understand the importance of what we do and how that translates to that vehicle? But we can't shout too much. We can't be too public. It's not a fear of putting our heads up high. But I think it's just, we're a very gentle industry. And I think everything's kind of has to be in its own timeline. And we don't like to rush things, and we like to get things 100% before we go out with, this is what this is what we're doing. And there are so many great companies doing so many great things. You see it on LinkedIn. Everyone's talking about, their sustainability and what they're doing. And also some of the companies are putting out more about their diversity. and what they're doing. And everything's so different, isn't it? When we first came into employment world, it was right, it's 9 to 5, this is what you're doing, here's your lunch and vouchers, off you go. New talent coming in the industry, they want different things, it's a bit more holistic, they want hybrid working, they want flexibility, they want a different form of recognition. And the industry is moving with those times, but we do have process, we have due process and due diligence that we have to do in our industry because we have a far bigger responsibility. So we will get there, but we will get there in our own time frame.
You took me back to spending luncheon vouchers in a fish and chip shop as part of what I did at my first job. Yeah, we were given luncheon vouchers and we had to find the right venues that took them. But actually, it was most places. So you took me back to that point. But joking aside, I think there are a couple of things just we've observed through Beyond the Blend podcasts. The gender and the balance there is changing quite dramatically in senior positions, role model positions, technology positions, all the way through. And beyond the Blend, we're really looking to show the breadth of the possibilities within those positions. And so I do agree with you there.
Absolutely. But Steve, sorry to interrupt, but a very important point to make is also being inspirational. We've got a lot of new talent coming in, or people at secondary schools, unis, thinking about what their options are. So historically, engineers, you'd think, it's a male dominated, but there are more and more female engineers coming through now. There are far more, girls taking their science subjects. If you remember, we did the Women in the Lubricants Industry last year as a special edition. I said to David, I wanted to do something. He was like, yeah, absolutely. I'll do it as a feature in the magazine. It'll be 3 or 4 women. I just think we need to. And David, he's a great boss. He gives me free rein to explore my own creativity. I'm very lucky. And I remember him coming over, like, how many women are you up to now? And I was like, yeah, a few more than 4. And he was like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm actually going to create a single issue dedicated to celebrating the achievements of these women. We've got presidents in there. We've got marketing managers in there. I said, I want this to cover a breadth of women from across the industry, not just one application, not just one discipline, and use it as an inspirational magazine so we can take it out to STEM, so we can show to people, look, this industry isn't just for the men. It's not a boys only club. The women are here. We're pretty strong individuals, and we've all got a voice, and we've all got a part to play. So the Women in the Lubricants Industry special issue last year was just off the scale. It was a beautiful celebration of some lovely ladies that I'm lucky enough to work alongside.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, and hats off to you guys over there for pulling that together. And it's been a source for us for ensuring that we find the right balance in this podcast, because I think it sets the tone. And as we start to think about the challenges that you describe, one of the first ones that you highlight is storytelling. So it probably leads me to the next question about your storytelling. What's next? What starts to look next in Lube News? How do you take the story forward? Looking forward, what's your vision, your plan?
So I inherited a pretty decent magazine, and I have to pay credit to my predecessors, Susie and Nikki and Andrianne. I inherited a great magazine. Laurie's a fantastic guy to work with. He manages the magazine, which means I can get out and go and meet people and go to conferences and events, and I can work on other projects. It's a great team. For us as a magazine, we've obviously developed the magazine. I say the digital offering now is an accessible offering, and it's available globally. So you can read it in any language. You can listen to it. So the magazine's there. We've got our special issues. So obviously we did the Women in Lubricants. I'm working on Rising Stars at the moment. So these are individuals under the age of 35 that companies or people want to, really highlight their achievements and their contribution to the industry. So I'm working on that at the moment. There's another couple of special issues, these additional issues that will be coming out during the year. So the magazine's all running tickety-boo. We know what we're doing with that. We've got Rising Stars. We've got another couple that are coming on, because we like to focus on things maybe just within the industry, aside of the industry. So important things that affect the industry and our growth. So we'll do a sustainability issue as its own publication as well during the year. And a big project that I've been working on for 18 months is STEM. So we've been to numerous conferences. You and I were at UEIL in Athens a couple of years ago. People were talking about how do we bring new talent into the industry. Everybody's talking about it, but nobody was doing anything. And I thought, well, never the follower, always the leader be. So we started working on our STEM project. And now 18 months later, we've linked up with STEM UK. We've linked up with School for Thought. We're just about to link up with a study app as well, but all university students access, millions access. We've been talking to other partners, and we're just launching our STEM ambassador program. So people can be a lube STEM in association with STEM UK. Basically, you sign up through their website. We're also putting together a toolkit. We're working with other parties within the industry, UEIL. We're looking at what we can do to get the industry into schools. So from secondary level, not just university, because by that point, you've kind of made your mind up, or you think the direction you want to go in. And we're making it interesting. How do we get our ambassadors into these schools? How can we get them, not blowing things up, that would be wrong, but how do we make our industry interesting and exciting for potential new recruits? So that's a really big project. So we've been working on it 18 months. We're just launching with the help, of course, from the UKLA board and various members. So we've pulled, rather than reinvent the wheel, we don't have the manpower to run something on our own. And why would you, when you've got so much excellence around you? So you link into everyone around you that's involved in that on a day-to-day, and you basically put a team together to put something out into the industry where we can work with universities who might be looking for funding for a 6-month project. We can take that to our member companies and say, there's a university near you, they're looking for some investment. Is this something you'd like to get involved in? And we can get our representatives from the industry out into that environment, be it a jobs fair, be it into schools, be it in science centres, and say, this is the industry, this is what we do. So this is very much a slow process. It's not something we can rush up. And I think we won't really see the fruits of this project for probably another 12 months. But we're working on it.
I think it's great to hear. Just there is so much ahead of you as well as that's gone before. So I'm excited by that and the role that the association UKLA is playing, and you are helping champion that as well, because I think that's really important. We've heard so many insights, achievements, and some tragedy. Your dad when you were 2, and your neck, and all of those things. You've probably learned some big things as well. So if I was to ask you right now, what is the sort of biggest learning or piece of advice that you would give somebody listening in to the podcast? What might that be, Tina?
On a personal level?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, biggest piece of advice. Listen. You were given these for a reason. Listen. Learn to walk away if a situation makes you uncomfortable. Be true to yourself. And I've always stood by my gut instinct. Even when everybody else's opinion is, because you never know what people have based an opinion on. Is it based on fact? Is it based on fiction? Have they done their homework? Are they showboating? You never truly know someone else's motives. And I think if you've got a gut instinct about something, then follow that. But, look, as human beings, listen more, pay more attention, be kind, because it's a pretty tough world out there. And when you're wrong, say you're wrong. because
Well, I mean, there's a lot in there, and I think that's very generous of you to share that with people and validate those things, because they're important things to hear from people who have been successful, that it's okay to do those things, walking away, trust your instincts. I think they're very important softer skills or softer experiences that sometimes are a bit hidden by our desire to deliver results and outcomes. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And that brings me to the point of really saying, I really appreciate you joining me on Beyond the Blend. I think I'll look differently at Alex Horn now, thinking that, really you and he are stood at the terraces at Chesham United FC with your flags and your scarves. It's exciting to hear.
Steve, I'm a fair weather supporter now. Quite often on a Saturday when it's very miserable and cold, you'll find me sat in my corner, listening to my vinyl on my stereogram, reading a book. So I'm very much a fair weather supporter. Can I just say that I want to thank you, Steve, because what I haven't mentioned, and I need to get this in, a little bit of sales pitch. We have got our 4th sustainability conference this June. And our conferences are great. It's a one-day event. We bring everyone together. And I've managed to convince Steve to come down and join in. So if you want to hear from the man himself, you need to grab yourself a ticket, because he's going to be live on stage. And it's not quite the in the blue and red corner that he's doing. We're doing that with Rafe, aren't you? But Steve will be joining us for the conference. So it really is an event you guys must get to in London and join us for the day, because it's going to be a very interesting day of discussion and networking.
And you tell me you're not in sales. There we go. Tina, thanks ever so much for joining me today.
You, Steve.
We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Blend. Be sure to follow us to catch next and future episodes as we continue to explore the people within the lubricant market.